reorganizational meeting together to order, and if you'll stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. During this reorganizational meeting, the superintendent leads this part of the meeting, and as soon as we get the new board seated and the new officers elected, I'll turn it over to them. Our first order of business is to approve the county clerk's certification of the April 2nd, 2013 municipal election results. The official results of the April the 2nd, 2013 election are that Terry McDaniel was the highest vote receiver with 1,185 votes, and the second was Rick Rudloff with 851 votes. Therefore, I need to entertain a motion to accept the official results and declare Terry and Rick as elected directors to serve a 3-year term on the Board of Education of the Reorganized School District Number R2, St. Genevieve County, Missouri.
I can vote on that, correct?
Yes, in fact you should. Charlie, you so moved. I need a second.
Second.
Eric, or was it Dave? Dave, okay. So a motion and a second. All four, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm not used to doing this part. Those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. And you do see there that you have the official letter from Ms. Bosler certifying the election results. All right, at this point, I need to administer the oath of office to our newly elected and appointed members. But before we do that, I want to thank Mr. Jim Kirshner. Mr. Kirshner, we appreciate your service to our district. Mr. Kirshner has served our district for 19 years and was recognized by the Southeast Superintendents as a retiring board member at our banquet this past Thursday night. And so we want to thank you, Jim, very, very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Rudloff, that seat's all nice and warmed up, and we'll invite you to join the board. Terry, if you will remain standing, and I'll ask you gentlemen to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Terry McDaniel,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of school director
discharge the duties of school director
in and for the St. Genevieve County R2,
in and for the St. Genevieve County R2,
County of St. Genevieve, State of Missouri,
County of St. Genevieve, State of Missouri,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
according to law.
according to law.
Thank you, gentlemen. You may be seated. At this time, we need to have election of our president of the board. We need to at this time entertain nominations. There doesn't need to be a second for a nomination. You simply need to give us a name.
Mrs. Riesinger for president.
All right. Are there other nominations? If not, I need either a recommendation for nominations to cease and elect by acclamation, or that we proceed to elect.
I move that we do that, cease the nominations and elect by unanimous.
Acclamation, yes, sir. Move that nominations cease by Charlie, and I need a second for that, by Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the motion carries. We'll move on to Vice President, much in the same fashion. I need the nomination.
Nominate Joan Dancy for Vice President.
All right. I need either a further nomination or a motion that nominations cease with election by
I
acclamation.
make the motion that we cease the nominations and approve it by acclamation.
By Charlie, and the second to that? By Martha. Those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Thank you. We need to nominate a delegate for MSBA, and we will follow the same fashion. We need a motion to nominate.
I'll make a motion to nominate Eric Bosler for the delegate.
All right. So need then a motion to I need another nomination or a motion to elect by acclamation.
Aye.
All right. Ms. Dunsey moves to elect Eric Bosler by acclamation. Second to that motion?
Second.
Charlie seconds that. Those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? An alternate for the MSBA delegate. I need a motion, or a nomination, please.
I nominate Joan Dancy.
Joan Dunsey's been nominated. I either need additional nominations or a motion to cease and elect by acclamation.
Cease and elect by acclamation.
Eric Bosler makes that motion. A second to that?
Second.
I'll second that.
That would be a second to Mr. Rudloff. Sorry, Charlie. We get the new guy on the paperwork here.
We're doing this for like 4 months.
Yeah, and didn't say a word up until now except yes, so that's. So all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? And so moved. At this point, I need a motion to adjourn the reorganizational meeting.
So moved.
By Joan and a
Second.
second by Eric. Those in favor? And those opposed? All right. My job is done here. Ms. Martha, it's back to you. Mr. McDaniel will want that back if you'll grab that plate while you're over there.
The first on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
You have to call it to order first, Martha, I'm sorry.
No, I should have known that.
I know you're new and all.
Oh, my God. Okay, first on the agenda is to call the Board of Education for Monday, April the 15th to order.
At 7:10?
7:10.
Okay.
And first on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda for the April 15, 2013 regular meeting as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the approval of the consent agenda items.
I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is public.
Martha,
Yes.
I apologize for not inserting this earlier. Could you explain to the people here and maybe those watching the format we use as far as receiving our board packets?
Oh, yes,
And
yes.
could you,
I
sometimes
was
people
gonna
think
do
it's,
this
okay, that's fine. Okay.
Thanks for reminding me though, Mr. McDaniel. I just like to let our people know that when we, sometimes when we're here and we either agree or disagree or whatever it might be, or don't ask a lot of questions, we get our board packets a week in advance. So we have plenty of time to, if there's any questions or anything that we need to know, and receipts that we need to find out about, we can just go up to the district office to talk to Mrs. Joker. Her door is open for us, and we can ask her anything, and a lot of times that just takes away the lengthy meetings. And I talked to other boards, and that's what they like to do, and so we thought that would be something we do. So we do get our board packets a week in advance for us to study them, and questions or any, we get the budget or the treasurer's report, and we go through all that. So anything that we need, and like with the consent agenda items, anything on there, if we have any questions, we can go out and we can find out, instead of having to ask all those questions in the meeting. Next is public participation. Overly.
Good evening, I'm Mrs. Overly, Mrs. Tina Overly, representing the SGNEA. First off, I'd like to welcome our board members. Mr. Rudloff, glad to have you there, and Mr. McDaniel, glad to have you back. And Mr. Kirchner, thank you for your time that you served on our school board. This past year has been an eye-opener for me coming here to the meetings, and I'm glad to work with you. The other things that are going on with SGNEA, we have Teacher Appreciation Week coming up here in May, and we are planning for each of the buildings to have cheesecakes, so they're Sweet Tooth will be taken care of. And prior to that week, we also have our retirement dinner, and just to let you know, I'm not quite sure who Mr. Otto will notify, but we have agreed to give some donations for the attendance prices. So that will be coming your way, Mrs. Jokers, if that's who.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure who is it.
Ms. Bart-Bigler.
Okay, she'll still be there, okay. And so I'm looking forward to next year being with all of you again, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to the report of the superintendent. Mrs. Joker.
Every single movie night is not a fundraiser, simply because I want a marquee. And I've already talked to
And a motor for the.
and a motor, and some signs, and I have a list. But Mrs. Joker's going to talk, so we're going to try and, get some.
I'm kind of thinking the income from the movies at the beginning is going to be a motor for that screen.
I got a crank.
Your crank may get cranky if you're not careful.
Some of his emails have been like,
Cranker.
Yeah.
he's been great. I want the marquee first.
I have one thing to say. Terry, you were with us when we went and looked at those.
Different
Auditoriums,
auditoriums,
right.
right, we went to Sullivan.
When we went to Sullivan, the lady there that took care of that, it was like walking in and that was hers, nobody else's. Well, I want you to know that as excited I was about her, she doesn't hold a candle to you.
I enjoy it, it's very much fun.
I remember you do teach SEMO too.
I do think that's what she does.
Does a phenomenal job of that as well.
At SEMO, when I was down there a couple of years ago, they'd have a weekend series on the terraces of academics of old-time horror pictures, the Mummy, Frankenstein.
Oh, yes.
You take your lawn
Yes,
chair.
we're gonna do musicals, we'll get somebody in there, it might be Mrs. Jokers and myself and a few others, but we'll, and I'd like to, I don't know, I know there's some edgier things. I thought Jaws during Shark Week would be, something that some people might come and see on the big screen again. I know a lot of the kids have not seen things that we would expect them to have seen. We have students who just haven't seen some of the old classics that maybe we grew up on. We have students who have said they've never seen the Star Wars series, and so I've had a couple of kids say, that might be an awesome thing to see on the big screen, and I'm thinking, how many hours am I spending with them there in a row? We're not going to do it all at once. They didn't understand why not. But, so we've got some plans and thought about doing some fun stuff.
So we don't have the capacity to show first-run movies,
No.
okay?
No.
That is the very expensive part that you have to have a agent, and it's just more, it's literally a racket. I mean, seriously, you feel like you're dealing with the mob on it, it's not good. But, we, for several years now, have purchased a license to be able to show DVDs and such at school. And it's through the Movie Licensing USA, a division of Swank Motion Pictures Incorporated. And basically, every year, by December 31st, we purchase a renewal that allows us to show movies for teachers, staff, parent groups, after-school programs, show movies for student rewards, rainy snow days, family movie nights, holiday events, last day of school, etc. So basically, anytime we are showing things for our kids, their parents, their families, we're within the scope of our licensing agreement. And so that says this requirement, or this allows us to use regardless of how the movies are obtained. I don't think they mean an illegal. I don't think it means that.
Movies for us.
Not bootleg movies, no, I don't think so. Whether or not an admission fee is charged, so we can charge an admission, whether the facility organization is commercial or nonprofit, it's pretty wide open, and it includes every possible movie producer that you can think of. It is all included on there. So for all of the major Hollywood studios, and we can use movie, they'll send us movie posters, bookmarks, activity sheets, whatever. So anyway, that as it came across my desk to renew it, I read this letter and I'm like, wait a second. This is exactly what we, this is what we want. We're showing DVDs and Blu-ray and that kind of thing, so any way that we can use those, we'll do that. And so yeah, we've talked about musical weekend. We've talked about with the August and September numbers being what they are, maybe we need to do a back to school series of some sort. Beach blanket bingo or something. I don't know. Yes. I don't know where that came from. Yes. But some of those kinds of things. So anyway, that's the report for, yes, we will be showing movies at the PAC. We have been. It's a good thing, and we'll be doing more of it.
Well, this is to let the community know that this is what we told everybody we tried to do it with the other way, with the first-rate movies, but it didn't work. So it's just to show you how the administration went out of their way to do what they could to help the community with these movies and get stuff.
I think it'll be fun. And this is the other thing. If we're showing it, we can decide when to hit the pause button and say, okay, it's intermission, everybody go out. If you want a soda and candy, now's the time. So I think that will help us protect the, not bringing food and stuff into the auditorium, and we can allow those things. Or if we're doing a movie marathon between movies, then we can, sell concessions and stuff like that. So I think it's going to work out really well, and we'll have a lot of fun with it.
Okay. First is photography bid.
Yes, I have, if you're looking at Moodle, then you'll see my recommendation. If you're looking at a paper copy, I think it still just has a blank there. But we got bids from 5, you see the bid sheet there, from 5 different photography places. I met with the gentleman from Wagner, and I met with Sheila from Portrait Gallery because they were the 2 lowest bids. Wagner offers a lot of freebies and extra things like that. Sheila also has been giving us the those large banner size pictures of the teams, and we're raffling those off to put towards a scholarship and some things like that. Sheila did on her original bid say that the composite would be for an additional $1. But I talked with her and told her that the bid sheet stipulated, that it be free with the purchase of a package for K5. That's what our bid sheet says. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I guess I didn't read it well enough, but yes, I'll do that. And so my recommendation is that we stay with Portrait Gallery. Sheila is local, and she has given phenomenal service to our school. Each one of the principals, I think at one time or another contacted me and said, please stay with her. She works very, very well with our people, with our sports teams, with our administrators. I don't have any complaint whatsoever, and I feel like we need to continue to support a local small business because she gives us great service.
Do you ask for these bids in the newspaper, or how do you ask them?
We normally they contact us and ask to be included in our bidding process.
So if you're gonna take a pictures, I mean, you should know to contact the school.
I assume so. These are the ones that have contacted us and asked to be included in our process.
Most time we.
This is not something we're required to bid out necessarily, because it's not a huge money item for the school.
I don't think we've
So-
ever really had a whole, many times we had 5 people that.
And this is a lot, normal for us, actually.
2 or 3.
Yeah. So, that's my recommendation, is that we stay with Portrait Gallery for a next 3-year contract.
I move to approve the bid for a 3-year photography contract with Portrait Gallery beginning on July 1, 2013 and ending on June 30, 2016.
Second.
Very good.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next is the process coordinator, special education teacher.
Okay. I'm gonna try to present this and allow Ms. Weiler to chime in if she hears me going astray. In the past few years, our numbers at special education students at Bloomsdale have fluctuated. They at one point kind of got pretty high, and we had hired a second special ed staff member that was full-time at Bloomsdale. The numbers kind of scaled back down, and we eliminated that position. We're kind of at a halfway point between those two places right now, and it's gotten so to the point that Ms. Overly, trying to do process coordinator and serve the students with the required minutes in their IEPs, that's become overwhelming, and she's unable to give that much time. We added an aide out there to help serve the students for the rest of this year. But Ms. Overly has indicated that she would prefer to be teaching full-time and not have the process coordinator duties. Is that accurate, Ms. Overly? So what we wound up doing, and actually the similar situation has existed at the high school as far as the fluctuation in our numbers. We were up to kind of a high water point, and then we were able to reduce our staff when Ms. Stotler left. We didn't replace that position at the high school, if you'll remember. And so we were able to deal with the caseload numbers there, but now they've started edging back up again, and so we feel it's time to create some, to add some additional help there at the high school. So what Ms. Weiler has envisioned is that we would create a position that's half-time Bloomsdale process coordinator, part-time, half-time, and part-time at the high school. That person at the high school will be a resource teacher, basically manning the study skills and study help room where students can come out of their regular classrooms and get tests read and work on different things. They'll maintain they'll be case manager for certain students, and they'll have some time here at the high school to work with those kids, but then the rest of the day will be spent at Bloomsdale doing process coordinating and assisting out there. Is that about the long and short of it? Okay. Questions about that, anybody?
I move to approve the addition of a part-time process coordinator at Bloomsdale Elementary and a part-time special education teacher at Bloomsdale High School.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next is the alternative school program.
Back in the summer, when you all did we as a board and superintendent did a goal setting work session, some of the things that we talked about during that time, automating the accounting process, and we're in full swing with that. Principals still are speaking to me for the most part. I keep telling them, yes, they can have an extension, which I think is why they're still speaking to me. But we're working on getting that done and automating the requisition process and going online with that, and some of our HR stuff is going to go online as well, and that was one of the things that we had talked about. The other thing, one of our major goals was the creation and study of a alternative system, somehow an alternative to suspending kids long-term. And so I charged Dr. Lindsay and the middle school and high school administration with studying that and coming up with a recommendation for us. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lindsay at this point.
One of the things that we did as a group, and when I say we, talking about high school administration and middle school administration and myself, is to start gathering some information about alternative school programs, because again, when you hear alternative school program, that means different things to different people. So we wanted to kind of get some baseline information, develop a set of questions and those kinds of things that we thought we needed to have answered. And then Mr. Haney and Mrs. Fleeg and I went on a tour of alternative school programs in the area. We went down to Perryville, we went to Fredericktown, and we went to Park Hill Central, and talked with the directors of each of those programs and observed in their alternative schools, looked at their handbooks, looked at their procedures, processes, asked them about things that if they could do things differently, what it would be, what did they think that they'd done that worked really well. Just talked about a wide variety of issues. After we got back, then of course we discussed the different programs and looked at some of the options, and then basically Mr. Haney and Mrs. Fleeg have put together a presentation on the alternative school program that they sort of envision for here. And at this time, I'll turn it over to them to present that information.
While he's doing that, I'll point out that we did attend the Distinction in Performance Recognition Banquet, and our plaque, our award certificate has been hung. You'll notice if you read it, it reads a little differently in that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed abandoned the recognition program in midstream, and the Missouri Association of School Administrators has picked it up and supported it. So I wanted to point that out. That makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. You're on.
I have to follow that.
Yes. And this is part of why we get that. Because
this is, again, kind of a brief cheat sheet of what we foresee to be the St. Genevieve R2 alternative system. I'm going to read the first part of it just for the sake of people at home. The St. Genevieve R2 alternative system includes students from various backgrounds and with various issues. And I want you to keep that in mind as we discuss this tonight. Although it does encompass long-term suspensions and things like that, it really encompasses a lot of issues. Normally, these are students who have had numerous office visits and monopolized, it should be I apologize, an inordinate amount of the administrator's time. It is the aim of SGAS to help students develop academic, social, and career competencies necessary to meet graduation requirements and transition post-secondary work, training, or education. Okay? Basically, in a nutshell, here's what we're talking about. You can read the goals. Our students served, we're going to approximately serve 14 kids in this program. And what we foresee, the one thing that became apparent to us as we looked at other programs in the area was really 2 certified staff and 1 classified staff is what's necessary to make this work. You have to have that kind of staffing in order to make a program like this work because of the various needs of the students and giving them the attention that they need. It also became apparent to us that this was very feasible for us because initially we were looking at asking for 1 certified staff, but what we realized in Fredericktown really woke me up to this was the idea that we can rewrite our current Pride Credit Recovery program at the high school, which encompasses 2 people, and move 1 of those over to the alternative situation, okay? And I explained that because basically what some of the alternative school does is credit recovery. The other thing that we kept hearing over and over as we visited schools was not only do you need multiple staff members, but you need to make sure you have a mix of students. You can't just put your long-term suspension kids in there and expect it to be productive. It's like any other classroom. You have to have a balance. You have to kind of look to balance it out. And your number 1 goal is to get people back into the regular ed environment when you can. So you've got to look at, are there attendance issues that we can do? Fredericktown, the thing they woke me up to was the idea of saying, if I have a senior going into that last year that needs more than 7 credits, they go to the alternative school. Reason being, in the high school, I can't offer them more than 7. but if I send them there, I can get them to graduate on time. That was Fredericktown's #1 look that they use every year to make sure that they give the kids the best opportunity they can. And of course, that's a good balance, because sometimes you got seniors who are pretty good kids that just fell behind. I think last month I was here talking about TPC being the number of freshman kids we have fall behind. This is, again, that sort of program that says, hey, you know what? We can put these students in there and get them to work on credits, get them caught up with credits. So again, one of the goals is to transition them back. Another goal that we looked at, or that we looked at in serving these, is the idea of attendance issues. We know under the new M7, we talked about this last month, that there's increasing standards on attendance. And I asked Mr. Mercer to kind of run a few numbers, so I'm going to pull this out and thank him for doing this. In 2009-10, we dropped 20 students due to attendance. In 10-11, we dropped 15. In 11-20, we dropped 20. And in 12-13, we dropped 10 so far. So I've concluded two things. One, Mr. Mercer likes to drop them in groups of 5, apparently. I don't know what that is about. But number two is we obviously won't be able to meet all of these kids, but we will be able to help service some of them. And again, some of these are great kids. They just struggle getting here and need that extra structure that an environment like this would provide. The other thing that we looked at was this year alone, 23 students are currently less than 80%. Again, those are kids that we're working on in the high school that this would provide us one more environment to serve, and 6 are under 75% attendance right now. So again, I just don't want it to be focused on long-term suspension and those sort of things. It does encompass those kids, but it encompasses another avenue for us to take with these kids we're dealing with all the time. And really, under students served, that number 2352. Those individuals, I want to explain that for a moment, because to me that's a critical part of this as well. It's not just the max 14 kids that we will serve in the program, it's what we're doing in the regular ed environment by removing those kids from that program. And in other words, if you take the average class size, the number of students per building that will be in the alt school, this is the impact they will have. This is the difference it'll make in the regular ed classroom. And I kind of go back to, it gives us one more tool, and I always kind of joke that, you know, if nobody ever got pulled over for speeding, there are many of us that would speed all the time. Because why? There's no penalty to it. This adds that one more element of saying, okay, when you're in that classroom, you've got to make conscious decisions as a student, knowing the repercussions. And right now, we've got a pretty far line. Because I know Mr. Mercer works extremely hard to not pull the trigger and do a suspension or even a long-term suspension. This kind of fills that gap. We've got another step to move to before we go there, if necessary or if appropriate. I'm not going to say we're going to remove long-term suspensions altogether, because as we know, safety is a huge issue, and sometimes that is simply necessary. We have to do that. Student placement in the program. This is kind of an interesting thing. They can go in at any time. On the high school, they'll pretty much only come out at semester. Reason being, when they go in, at a minimum for the remainder of the semester, we will write them a curriculum that matches what they're doing in the classroom. We don't want to pull them in and out because that's going to frustrate the student, frustrate the classroom teacher. We want to leave them in there to get that credit. And then if they're ready, if they've met all the criteria and they're ready to return, then that will be a decision that a committee will make, just as the committee will make the decision to put them in the alternative school. The committee will make the decision to pull them out. For high school kids, it will happen at semester. For middle school kids, that will mostly happen at quarter. And I say mostly because we'll use a little more flexibility with 6th grade students. And they have to place 6th grade students because, again, our goal is to get them back in the regular ed classroom. Sometimes that just may be a 2-week placement or so. Julie, is that pretty accurate with what we talked about with 6th grade?
6th grade, maybe more as a shock, just to get them back in line and say, you know, this is an option, this hangs out there.
Yeah.
If you continue to act like this is going to be the result.
We would keep ISS as part of this. It was sort of umbrella under it, and really the only reason we would do that is statistical purposes. We feel like the ISS, what would be the PRIDE program at our high school then. And when I say our PRIDE program at our high school, here's basically what I'm talking about. Currently I have 2 teachers, one that's PRIDE that does a lot of what this does, and one that's credit recovery. We're looking at a 4-tier system. Our first tier in both buildings would basically be my credit recovery, which would be if a student has like 1 credit they need to make up or can benefit from 1, we would do that. We would get them their 1 within the normal high school credit recoveries that exist now, and also get them some basic skills. So that's sort of a, hey, you had a little issue, a little hiccup in the road, but we think we can fix it relatively simply. You're showing us a lot of maturity. We think this will help, and this is what we're going to go for. Okay, in the middle school, that tier 1 is more their pride program. It'd be switched a little bit, not a lot from where it is, but again, those switches would be to better serve the students. And tier 2 becomes the issue of, it encompasses placement for quarter or semester. That's where we're saying, hey, look, now you're going to the alternative system. You're going to get in there. You've got a shot to get out, whatever you've done, whether it's a suspension that we're not going to take you out of the classroom. We don't feel it's at that level. And I'll be honest, I think of all of our long-term suspensions this year in the high school, I'd say only one of them I would deem maybe not worthy of this. The other ones, it would have been a situation where a kid made a mistake. It was a simple mistake. It really didn't cause any harm to anybody else. And as such, though we had to do what we had to do, this would give us that alternative to keep them in school, keep them earning credits, and keep them moving, and hopefully get them back into the classrooms. And tier 3, of course, is a little more serious for us. That's sort of where, okay, now you're going to be a lifer. You're either too far behind in credits, and this is your chance. This is our shot. And a lot of times this is going to be twofold. It's going to help them and it's going to help us, because what it's ultimately going to do is it's going to allow us, an opportunity to get them tested for EOCs, to get them their personal finance, to get them their health, to get them those classes that are required for graduation, but to also help set them up as seniors to go to the GED options program. Okay, and we would get them a bona fide diploma then through our district and make them a graduate of our district. So to me, that's a really exciting element there, is these kids that are so far behind. And we do currently send them to GED options, but we really struggle with that because of the preparation for the program and then trying to get them their personal finance class. A lot of times they come back from Perryville, they go to a 5th hour personal finance, they're hit and miss there. But again, it's part of that. Do you want to pull the trigger? Do you want to make all that work or not? And you're really pushed to the limits. And then tier 4 is a group that traditionally we haven't really provided much support for at all. And that's that group that either has transferred to us with problems, and unfortunately they might be in an alternative school up in another district, and when they come to us, we place them in the main environment. We know they haven't been successful there. They've shown they can't be successful there. They've shown they can be successful in alternative environments, yet when they get here, that's what we get. And then the other side of that coin is our own drops who come back who are way behind in credits. And a lot of times there's kind of that no at the door. Central has a really good enrollment program for that, where they go through an interview process. You want to come back, we've got to take a chance on you, you've got to show us you're worth that chance. And if they pass through that enrollment process, then they take that chance, and they've had a fairly good success rate with it. So again, these are all those things that could be encompassed with this. I know I've bounced around this, I'm sorry. I want to talk about facilities for a minute, because I know that's the next thing. How are you going to place us? How are you going to make the rest of the school environment secure? How are you going to ensure that this is what it needs to be? What we'd like to do is use 6B, which for those of you who don't know is right out that door. It is next to the technology office. It's our current prime credit recovery. The reason we'd like to do that, it has outside access. It has isolated access from the rest of the building, and it's just down that short little hall that goes into the library. Okay? So therefore students would be able to enter into that room in the morning. They would not be with the regular ed population through the day. In the mornings, it's close proximity to the cafeteria to either have food brought in, or on a treat day to allow them to go down to the cafeteria to actually eat. And it has restrooms. Right now, the faculty restrooms that are at the end of the little hallway, and all the buildings and all the facilities we looked at, they were very adamant about making sure that that is shared. Well, not shared, but a lot of them have this shared staff, but making sure it's a monitored situation where one student goes in, uses the restroom, comes out. That way there isn't that congregation that goes on, there isn't that unmonitored communication between them, that sort of thing, that it's a one-in, one-out sort of system. And that provides for that, and that provides for that probably within 15 feet of the classroom. Then the other thing we know is we need 2 rooms. That was the other thing that became apparent to us, is because you've got to have some place to break them up at times. You're going to have those kids, I think it was Perryville, where in one instance in another room, they had one kid aligned to each wall, because that was the structure that particular student, those students needed at that time. So it became real apparent to us we needed a second room. And at the end of that hallway is the old tech office that provides the second room. And what I would really like to see happen, because we have to conference to put a kid in, we have to conference to take a kid out, there's a lot of that going on, is that room's kind of like Oklahoma. It's got a panhandle in the main part of the room. If we could divide off that panhandle into a conference room, that would provide us that meeting place and privacy and all that we would need. It would provide a good sized classroom for 4 or 5 isolated students with a classified or certified staff member, and it's right down the hallway from the other one. In essence, what we've done is, with the office setting back there, not in any of the regular ed population, we have managed to create this alternative system using the facilities that we already have. Just so I've been clear, 6B, which is currently our prime credit recovery, they would move to the old choir room, which is about 4 square foot smaller. So again, there's not much of a, it's a good trade-off going on there. There isn't much of a loss. They have a beautiful closet there. They have a beautiful closet there. They have outside access there. They have outside access there. The difference is, in case you're curious, again, the proximity of the 2 rooms and the use of those restrooms was key in making the alternative system work. So that was sort of why we looked at the placement of those things. Other than that, I think I've covered student serve, student placement. I've talked about committee going in, committee going out, when they might possibly come out. Staffing, again, just to be clear, we've used 2 certified staff members. One of those would transfer over from the high school. And I'll say this, just so it's been said, we're at a real benefit. One of the teachers that would transfer over is, and I've talked to this individual, they would be very willing to go, is also a SPED certified individual. So if we would have to place a student with an IEP in the program, and it's very likely we would, that we would still be able to service those minutes, because we would have a SPED certified teacher as part of that program. This individual is wonderful. I couldn't have picked a better person if you guys allow this to use to start up a program like this. I mean, he's just amazing. So, and then of course 1 classified staff member.
So Mr. Haney, the classroom would be 6 through 12 graders, is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, at any given time, the potential exists for that. Yes, ma'am. And in most of the programs that we saw, that's what we would. Yes.
All under this roof with minimal interaction
Yes.
with other.
And it was interesting, and some of this we haven't clearly defined yet, simply because if you grant us permission, we'll move forward to look at the specifics. But it was interesting, some of the, we kind of look at, and I think what students take for granted as rights, the other place is kind of defined as privileges, and you must earn those privileges. One of the things I thought was interesting in Perryville was the first privilege you could earn was the right to choose your entree in the school lunch. Because if you think about it, we have to provide a school lunch. It doesn't say we have to provide a myriad of choices and whatnot. So they have a standard lunch that's brought in unless you've earned enough points to get to that right of choice. Okay. I also want to be clear, students in the alternative system would not qualify for any extracurriculars. They would not qualify for dances. They do not. All of that is off the table again. Pretty much so what you would deem, if you could think of a privilege, is stripped, and we go back to a basic education to start with. Now, some of that stuff can be earned. And in one of the programs, I did have one individual that did such an amazing job that they decided to let that person go to their senior prom.
So then the credit recovery or whatever that program's called that we send the kids to Perryville for now to get their GED.
That's GED options.
That's the GED options program. Well, that's interesting. To be honest with you, we haven't fully looked at phasing that into us yet. I talked about preparation for that program. Where that program would actually take place kind of remains to be seen. In my eyes, I knew one way or the other we would be able to service that, whether it still be through Perryville or whether it be taking that on ourselves. So I didn't really kind of answer the question of where that would fall just yet, because I've got 2 thoughts. One is if we can save some tuition money and put those resources into our own district, you do that. But the other is if we can service more kids by outsourcing 4 or 5, cost-benefit analysis there, and we hadn't really, I'll be honest, I hadn't looked real hard at what I wanted to do with that or what I thought was the best recommendation.
It's important to get it started.
Yeah, that's exactly, because that's what I figured. One of the hopes is that if we're allowed to move forward with this, of maybe getting somebody in place who's had alternative school experience and can get a better kind of, feel for, hey, I've lived it for a couple of years, and you got a good start here now. Nice job, Chris, sit down and let me take it from here. So.
Well, Ms. Jenny, I know we talked about this several years ago, trying to get this started, and it was looked about, and just never really, developed, and this is so important for those kids, not to just stay home, because, most of the parents don't want their kids to stay home anyway.
Yeah, and most of the kids want to stay home.
Right.
So,
right.
this
So
provides that
But the
sort of,
parents would, make sure that they got here, and I really think if they got here and, I don't know, they might be a little different, but just to know that, to show them that, they're not getting by with it.
yeah, and, and it's twofold. It helps the kids that are in there, and I think it helps the kids that aren't in there going, okay, I danced that line before because that line was a little out here.
Right.
Because we really had to know, or is it worth it to send you home or not? Now that that line's back here, they don't have quite as far to dance. And I think some of them will come to that realization. Students need structure.
Right,
Yeah.
they stay home.
Right, if we stay home.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the kids, because it is much more one-on-one with students too, that maybe, they'll work with somebody and could help save them too, just in a relationship.
Well, and I put great faith in one of the the individuals that we would move to this program. I can tell you, if there's a gentleman that clicks with kids, especially these type of kids, it's that gentleman. I mean, it is his forte, he's very natural with it.
So Mr. Haney, the Pride would go down to one certified staff member?
Yeah, it'd be a combination of, see, currently we do credit recovery with basic skills thrown in. And the basic skills portion of that kind of lacks. And that's what we would sort of bring back, because again, it doesn't need to be as hardcore as it's been in the past, because those hardcore guys would move over to your alternative system. So it would help them get the credits back and teach them some of those skills, and it would kind of be that step one of, okay, you're a little behind, but we think we can do this, and we're going to hope to fix it. Because sometimes too in that credit recovery, it is what we talked about last month, and it's those kids that are just transitioning to high school and having those difficulties and get a little behind, and we need to get them this or that and do it as quickly as we can. So that would indeed go to one, and that would service the basic skills element and some low-rate credit recovery, and there would still be Pride at the middle school servicing those students. Julie, would you like to speak
Well,
on
I was going to say, right now, the middle school Pride program is taught between 3 teachers, 2 sections of 6th grade, and then 4 of a combined 7th and 8th grade. And of those 3 people, everyone has their own style. It's taught very differently. So I'm looking at taking one teacher and putting her in charge of the Pride program. And so she would have 6 hours of Pride. The individual I'm looking at is trained as a reading specialist. So I would want to incorporate some of that, incorporate more study skills instruction, keeping organized, just things like that. And I've talked to her, she's very enthusiastic and loves this type of kid. She's trained to do this. So she is really excited about
Very good.
getting her hands on it, if you will, and making it hers. And making it consistent for all of the kids.
It's going to take something like that for those kids to really hang on to see that they really care.
And that's what we discovered looking at all the various programs. You have to find the right person. I mean, you can put someone in there that's going to yell at kids and keep kids on track. That is not what they need. They need someone who actually cares. And if they say something or do something inappropriate, give them time to reflect and then come, to think about it and then come back and say, was that an appropriate way to handle that? And one of the people we talked to said he uses it as a lesson for the entire group. At the end of the day, they talk about what happened, why it happened, and how it could have been handled more appropriately by that person. So,
When you say approximately 14, is that a limit or is that just an approximation?
As you'll know from class sizes, it's in my eyes with Julie and me, or I'm going to say with me, it's a limit. Because if I don't set a limit, I'm going to look at every case that maybe I can save a kid. I'm going to come on, guys, you can. But what I have, exactly, one more, because this one, I'm telling you, you can turn this one around, but the truth of the matter is, I would trust very much that staff, because they're the ones, kind of like the coach of the team, they've got to work with the chemistry of those kids. So if they're rolling with 14, and those 14 are great, because the other thing I want to be clear about, we will send them in and out of semester for the most part, But there is a situation where a kid needs to go in, and they might have 2 or 3 kids where they're like, you know what? We're just buying time to the end of the semester. So it's like, well, let's go ahead and pull 1 or 2 of those out, and let's bring this in. Or if we're at 14 and I get it, we got one that we have to take and we're fine because we're rolling well, then we go to 15. We'll do that juggling the best we can, but everywhere we saw, again, it was make sure you keep your numbers balanceable, or manageable. Make sure that you can do that, because if not, you're setting them up for failure, you're setting the kids up for failure.
Well, if it's too big, you're down to Main Street.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And even worse, because you're teaching them a myriad of subjects as opposed to, yes, absolutely. So my hope would actually be that, for the most part, in servicing these kids, we might stay below those numbers. Because like I said, there's that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Once we start placing them, some of these other kids go, oh, I don't want that, Mr. Andy. So my hope is that that's going to change this structure. And again, that goes back to that 2352 number of that side of things.
Which in both instances you're talking about there is going to help us with MSIP, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to help us with hopefully graduation rates. It's going to help us with hopefully attendance rates, progressing towards graduate. I mean, all that stuff. Hopefully, this will give us one more tool to work on, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like when we left there, and I was talking to Julie, and I'll give her credit. She came back and started talking about, like she said, I can redefine my pride. I can do this. And it was like, wow, you're seeing the same thing I am. I've got a great guy that's ready to do this. You've got a wonderful individual that's ready to do this. It just really felt like the time is right. If we could get you guys to allow us to find that one more piece, and then that classified staff, we were like, we think this, to me, that we have some good personnel that can really launch this thing and make it work. They have the right chemistry, and I really left there, and I'm not going to speak for Julie, but I really left there and felt like if we could put this together now, we would be a step ahead of everybody else who's been doing it for years, because I really felt that good about our people and the program. And I also say this, our program will look a lot like the ones we visited, because if you read their programs, they look a lot like each other. They've sort of figured this stuff out, and it's kind of a standard now.
We have this set up for next school year?
That's the idea. You'll notice that the motion calls for seeking appropriate staff as necessary. So we're going to need at least one more certified staff. That would put us back to that, if you remember, I said we were down half, and we're adding back half at Bloomsdale and adding back half. Well, this would make us back to that. It's a wash now. But saying that to say that our finances can sustain that, because we have had that many staff before, and so that is not really an issue. We'll budget accordingly for the coming school year. The classified staff member, Ms. Weiler, and I have been bouncing around classroom aid numbers, and just as the caseloads for our certified staff go up and down based on the needs of the students, so does the demand for teacher aides to work with those students go up and down based upon their needs. And right now she's at a point where we have Miss Kathy Broth, who is retiring. We approved her retirement quite some time ago. We would probably, instead of replacing her in the special education field, put that replacement, add that person into this program. So again, our numbers overall don't change. So it's a very good time, personnel-wise, numbers-wise, to do that. I believe Dr. Lindsay has some information too, because Tier 2 talks about the long-term suspensions, and really that's one of the things that, having spent 10 years dealing with those students that come to us and they've gotten in some sort of trouble and they're going to have a 90-day suspension, or they're going to have to come back on a behavior contract, and then they have a 30-day suspension, and then they come back and then they're suspended again because they have, I've gotten to the point now where we've had some repeat offenders, and we don't have anything good to do with those kids. It was always a very frustrating thing for me and the parents, because our goal is not to have these kids out of school. Our goal is to change their behavior. And this allows us something that actually would go towards changing the behavior rather than just sitting them at home for a while, you know? So Dr. Lindsay has some numbers about those long-term suspensions that I was asking him to share.
Yeah, before I do that, Mr. Haney did a good job of talking about the benefits to the students that would be in the program. He also talked about the benefits to the rest of the student body, and also touched on the direct benefits through MSIP 5 and the new APR and those kinds of things. There's other benefits as well too, because teachers get a high level of frustration with dealing with those kinds of issues over and over and over again from the same students. So it provides a little bit of a break there as well. Also with the administration, I mean, they spend an inordinate amount of time sometimes with just a few students that consistently and constantly over a period of time are having disciplinary issues. So really, as he mentioned, the academic benefits will be there, graduation rate, those kinds of things, attendance, and when I started looking at numbers, there have been, so far this school year, there have been 10 students referred to me for potential long-term suspension. And with those 10 students, they have been or will be by the end of the year suspended out of school 388 days. There's an impact right there. That's not good. As Ms. Joker said, it's not good for the kids because in some cases they're unsupervised or whatever the case may be. They get behind on credits. Their attendance suffers. And, everything is impacted by that. And this would be a program that could really, really benefit those students and, as we mentioned earlier, benefit the district as well. So,
Do you have questions for any of us at this point?
If you choose to make a motion on it, I'd like it to be for an alternative system in that school, please. Reason being, as we investigated this, we really don't want to launch our own school because of the implications that could have on our MSIP data. We'd like to keep these kids under the umbrella of our own building. So if you would just make sure the motion includes an alternative system and an alternative school, I would appreciate that.
Well, just listening to you guys, you, Mrs. Twig, like I was telling Mrs. Otto a while ago, the personality of Sullivan, I just thought was amazing. But knowing her and seeing how it's turned around, just listening to you guys, I can't imagine this being any better anywhere else.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So system instead of school?
Yes, the way this reads, I didn't compare notes with Chris soon enough, but the recommendation reads right now alternative school program. It would simply need to say alternative system.
So move to approve the alternative system program as presented and seek appropriate staff as necessary.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of Education hold a closed meeting with a closed record and a closed vote following the regular open meeting on May 20th, 2013 to be held in the R.W. Thomas Library, 715 Washington Street, St. Genevieve, Missouri, for the purpose of discussing and voting upon the following items of business: legal action, causes of action, or litigation; lease, purchase, or sale of real estate; hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting particular employees; scholastic probation, expulsion, or graduation of identifiable individuals; testing and examination materials; preparations for negotiation with employee groups; specifications for competitive bidding until approved or published; sealed bids and related documents until the bids are opened; sealed proposals and related documents until all proposals are rejected, or any documents related to a negotiated contract until a contract is executed; individually identifiable personnel records; performance ratings or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment; records protected from disclosure by law; records relating to municipal hotlines established for the reporting of abuse and wrongdoing; confidential or privileged communications with an auditor; existing or proposed security systems and structural plans of district property; records identifying would allow unauthorized access to or unlawful disruption of the configuration of components or the operation of a computer, computer system, computer network, or telecommunications network; credit card numbers, personal identification numbers, digital certificates, physical and virtual keys, access codes, or authorization codes that are used to protect electronic transactions. I further move that notice of this meeting and a tentative agenda be posted as required by law. Have a motion and a second. Roll call, Eric Bosser,
Yes.
David Bova,
Yes.
Charlie Crowther,
Yes.
John Dunsey,
Yes.
Eric McDaniel, yes, Martha Reesinger,
Yes.
Rick Ruloff,
Yes.
I didn't say it, but Rick Ruloff, okay. Motion carried, 7-0.
I move to go to closed session with a closed record and a closed vote after a short break.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.